Okay, so people who are Quranists, people who, this is a phase, we know that people go through this phase and they go, okay, I'm going to become a Quranist for a little bit. When hadiths don't make sense to them, they go, okay, you know what? I'm going to go into this, I'm not going to, I'm not going to defend hadiths anymore. So look at this Quranic verse. My challenge is to those people, tell me what it means. This is chapter 9, verse 49. It's the worst chapter. This is a chapter of blood and gore and humiliation for Jews and Christians. Anyway, so Allah here is saying, there are some of them, meaning some other companions of the Prophet, who say, exempt me and do not expose me to temptation. They have already fallen into temptation, and hell will surely engulf the disbelievers. So what does it mean? There are some of them who say, exempt me and do not expose me to temptation. I get it. Again, it's vague because Quran is vague and nonsensical book. That's why we just cannot make any sense out of it. They have already fallen into temptation. So they're saying, well, these people have already fallen into temptation. Full stop. And hell will surely engulf the disbelievers. Is it talking about those people who have just fallen into temptation? Or it's just saying random things, like how Allah at the end says, Allah will, surely the most beloved and compassionate,
most merciful, most
whatever,
forgiving,
blah blah blah.
The best of creators, which means there were more creators
so what
than
is
him.
He talking?
Yeah.
So is he condemning those who go into temptation, or is it something separate? Anyway, so again, it's so unclear. So what we do is we look into tafsir. So look at this one. Yeah. So this says, and there are some of them who say, grant me leave to stay behind and do not lead me into temptation. This was Al-Jad bin Qais, to whom the Prophet said, will you do battle against the Byzantines? So Prophet was basically preparing his men to invade Byzantine Empire. So, like those of you Muslims who hate these invaders, America being an invader, well, you know what? This is what Prophet did too. He was encouraging people to let's invade.
Offensive wars. Yes.
Offensive wars. But why? And how would he tempt his people? So this guy is saying, dear Prophet, we've got plenty of war booty and sex slavery here, the concubines and what our right hands possess. But even though there was a guilt in these men, Nuria, this is a thing. And I know you can only go on for so long because you've murdered their men and you've taken their women as sex slaves. So these guys were doing that in Arabia already. But Prophet is encouraging them, let's go to Byzantine. But what's in Byzantine Empire? There are blonde women.
Exotic. Okay, yeah, they're bored of the black brown hair. They're like, let's get some exotic women under our
blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white-skinned women. So this companion of Prophet is saying, don't take me to Byzantine. There are lots of I will fall into temptation. And I don't get it. This temptation is supposedly allowed. Yeah, you can have sex with what your right hand possesses. There are tons of hadiths for it. And Quranic verses as well. Chapter 4, verse 74. Actually, let me show that to you as well before I go further into it. So those of you who are watching it for the first time probably don't know. Sex slavery is legal in Islam. So this so-called temptation is actually allowed. And it says, also forbidden are married women except female captives in your possessions. So these, or in other words, it says except those your right hands possess. And there are tons of hadiths saying to the Prophet that confirm that. So
and in fact, going into gory details on what you can do, whether if their husbands are still alive, if they're married or not. There's full-on details in the hadith where the Prophet's encouraging them to have sex with them, even though their husbands are still alive, because they fall in that sex slave category. But yeah, go on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, and I'll share that at the end of that as well. So anyway, so what's this verse is talking about? So Prophet said, will you do battle against the Byzantine? And to which he replied, I am infatuated with women, and I fear that if I were to see these Byzantine women, the Arabic word used is, I forgot what it's called, but anyway, translated as blonde women. Actually, it's in the Quranic
I think it's
verse.
Yellow-haired. The literal translation is something like that.
So anyway, so here he's saying, and if I fear that if I were to see these sexy, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Byzantine women, I shall not be blonde bombshells. There it is. I shall not be able to stay away from them and be led into temptation of, meaning raping them. God exalted be, he says, surely they have already fallen into temptation by staying behind. So here, by staying behind his thing, he said, no. You're not worried about the temptation of going to war and raping these women. You're falling into temptation of staying behind, of, temptation of peace, comfort of home. So Allah is basically saying, no.
Live and let live. No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Allah is saying, no, go to war. Doesn't matter if you go. And Muhammad didn't condemn him anyway. And this is the reason why this Cass guy ended up being called a hypocrite, because he refused to go to war because he didn't want to rape Byzantine blonde women. A variant reading for Sakutu, they have fallen, has a similar form, Sakat, he has fallen, and surely hell shall encompass the disbelievers, for whom there shall be no escape therefore. So that is what it means by the temptation is not the temptation of raping women is condemned, but the temptation to stay behind and not to go to war. That's the temptation that Allah is condemning. So blonde women, come. So basically, Allah is actually saying, or Muhammad is trying to encourage people, mate, there's nothing wrong in, feeling tempted.
In fact, in a really, really, this is in a very colloquial, like to use modern day slang, he's almost giving them FOMO, like fear of missing out on conquering and having these blonde women as their sex slaves. But that is also a very self-aware, womanizing, misogynist, rapist man. He's actually saying, let me stay behind.
Yeah. There's another excerpt of that. There are some, again, this is altafsir.com. So these are legitimate Muslim books, Muslim websites. And there are some of them who say, grant me leave to stay behind and do not lead me into temptation. Prophet said, will you do battle against the Byzantine? To which he replied, I'm infatuated with women, and I fear that if I were to see these Byzantine women, I shall not be able to stay away from them and be led into temptation. So sorry, it's the same one. So those who want to stay behind and not rape Byzantine women are being condemned as hypocrites. Is he who said the reference is the Jihad bin Qais said, don't feel sorry for him. The guy already admitted he is a raper anyway. But
believe me, I don't. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's done why I said he's a rapist as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe he had problem down under and it didn't work as
I've hung up my gloves from raping women.
Yeah. So he's to stay at home, Nuria. This one says it clearly as well. He's a hypocrite for staying at home and tempting not to buy the women of historic Syria. Surely it is a temptation of idolatry and hypocrisy that it has fallen. Hell is all around and will be all around the day of judgment. So
look at the guilt trip as well. Like, surely it's you want to stay home and not rape these women, but now you're being tempted to go follow the idolaters because you're not refusing to go on these offensive war battles and get this war booty that comes with it. Like, that's gaslighting as well.
So anyway, there's that's just, there you go. So let's just be devil's advocate. So they said Prophet Muhammad did not say that. But again, the problem is Prophet Muhammad did not condemn him. Prophet Muhammad did not say. He could have said. And that actually shows that under Islamic jurisprudence, it is allowed to rape women. Because Prophet Muhammad could have said, hang on a second. What do you mean by if you saw blonde women, you wouldn't be able to control yourself? We have a law and order here. You're not allowed to rape women. That's what Prophet Muhammad could have said. No, he didn't say it. You know why? Because it's fair game. It's allowed. You can do this. By the blessing of the leader. When Russians Red Army went into Germany, they raped every German woman. Why? Because Stalin was aware of it, and Stalin said, let them have fun. They've been through a lot. And that was these mad rulers' way of thanking their soldiers, that this is one free thing. Basically, it's at no cost to the leader. If there's war booty, you have to share. But the women is just a free reward for these warriors and soldiers. A lot of warriors and soldiers used to just go to war just so they could have, they could rape these women. There are tons of hadiths that
I was going to say that actually this was one of many instances in which the Prophet could have, laid down the law. But he's in fact, like the one we mentioned earlier, when they actually seem to have a little bit more of a moral compass than him and saying, oh Prophet, we don't know what to do with these women who are married. And he actually gives them the green light to go ahead and rape them because of that verse, those which your right hand possess. So there are many instances where he could have laid down the law flat out, but he didn't. And the hadith just testify to that so much. And again, it's in a moment where, you know, that is such a watershed moment. You know, you've taken over this tribe, you've killed them, or you've not killed them in this instance, like their husbands are still alive, and your own people are turning to you and say, what do we do in this situation? As the prophet, having a direct line to Allah, his word sets precedent, and this is the precedent that he chose to set.
Yeah, that's the hadith you're referring to. The way the companions. I think we should make a hadith, a video where we should say 10 times when the companions of the prophet were better humans than the prophet himself. So we got some captives on the day of Atas, and they had husbands among their people. They mentioned that to the messenger of Allah. So the following verse was revealed: and women who are already married, except those whom your right hand possesses. This is Jamia Tirmidhi 1132. There's another one of that where I think this is the one.
But so, and also just to see how clever that is, the fact that the prophet's companions at that time had an issue with the fact that they were married, and the prophet actually says that line, except those who are married, except those that your right hand possess. So that is now making the fact that they are married null and void, and giving you a carte blanche to go ahead and rape them because they fall under war booty. Yeah.
Nuria, this is the one. So the Prophet sent a military expedition to Autas on the occasion of the Battle of Hunain. They met their enemy and fought with them. They defeated them and took them captive. Some of the companions of Apostle of Allah were reluctant to have relations with the female captives because of their pagan husbands. So they were reluctant. They were like, oh, hang on, their husbands are alive. We cannot rape them. So Allah, the Exalted, the Merciful, sent down the Quranic verse, and all married women are forbidden except captives whom of war or your right hand possesses. This is to say that they are lawful for them when they complete their waiting period. So if they've had their period, then they can, if they bled at least once or twice, or whatever the term is. So that's the time.
And there's if they're pregnant, I think that you have to wait till the child is born. But wow, what a mercy.
Yeah. And there's another one where Prophet, we attack the infidel women and children at nighttime. We attack the infidel at night, and the women and children die. Prophet said, so they felt bad about it.
Oh, so and he said, it's fine, that's just collateral damage. Go for it.
Is that Sarah there among them? Okay, let me show that as well. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there we go.
So Sunan Ibn Majah, a good call, 2839. It says, the Prophet was asked about the polytheists who are attacked at night and their women and children are killed. He said, don't worry about them. Problem, no worries. Just kill them.
And again, look at this. Look at the cowardice. Attacked at night. So these people are most likely just sleeping in their khemas or their tents or whatever in that Bedouin lifestyle, doing no harm, just literally asleep in their beds. Mothers holding their children, which we actually know of the story of Asma bint Marwan. I think it was her, right? Or am I getting confused? She was clinging to her child, her youngest child, and there were 3 other children in the room. And they literally took the child out of her arms and killed her. So this is just an extension of that same mentality. This was at night, unprovoked, and these women and children are just purely collateral damage for this offensive attack led by the Prophet himself.
That's just 2 instances where companions of the Prophet were better than Muhammad himself.
If you like these videos and want to support me in my activism, then you can support me on Patreon or PayPal. Stay free, everyone.